The origin of the difficulty between the traveler and the reviewer, for there was a difficulty, is to be found in the preceding volume of the Quarterly, in the first number for July 1815. It was his passage which occurs in a review of Campbell's travels in South Africa. Having heard, says Mr. Campbell, of some paintings in Salakatu's house, we went after breakfast to view them. We found them very rough representations of the camel, leopard, rhinoceros, elephant, lion, tiger, and Stein buck, which Salakatu's wife had drawn on the clay wall with white and black paint. However, they were as well done as we expected, and may lead to something better. If any credit were due to the authority of M. Humboldt, they have already something better. Mr. Truder relates, says the travelers, that in the southern extremity of Africa, among the Bechuanas, he saw children busy in tracing on a rock, with some sharp instruments, the characters which bore the most perfect resemblance to the P and M of the Roman alphabet, notwithstanding which these rude tribes were perfectly ignorant of the writing. No such passage, nor any allusion to circumstance, in the only journal which Mr. Truder wrote. We take it upon ourselves to assert the possibility of having examined the original manuscript with great care. Yet this is a fact on which M. Humboldt hangs on one of his numerous theories. But enough of the reviewers and tourists. Humboldt's visit to London in the summer or fall of 1818 had something of a political cast. For in addition to his receiving a commission for the Allied powers to compose a political treatise on the colonies of South America, probably in relation to the boundaries of French and Portuguese Guiana, he was summoned by the King of Prussia to Aix-la-Chapelle, where the Congress of the Allied Powers was to be held. He arrived there on the 13th of October and remained until the 26th of November. Famous as Aix-la-Chapelle was for the treaties that had been signed there, it was never so resplendent as now. The object of the Congress being an important one, namely the settling of all the old scores that Napoleon had entailed upon Europe. Before and after the Battle of Waterloo, the adjustment of the formidable bugbear, the balance of powers, in short, the formation of what has been since called the Holy Alliance, as if any alliance between kings and emperors could be holy. It was necessary for all that leading portents of the Europe to be present. Thither came the King of Prussia and the Emperors of Russia and Austria, each with his train of diplomats, astute statesmen headed by the wily Metternich and the sagacious Nesselrode. France sent Talleyrand, and England Castlereagh, and Wellington. On the 5th of November came William von Humboldt, somewhat disgusted with politics. Another potentate was present, though we may question his being taken into account by the many personages that arrived at the Congress. It was Alexander von Humboldt, who was holding Congress of his own. To the few who were admitted saved himself and the King of Prussia, it was related to his old scheme of traveling in Asia. The king promised to defray the expenses of his preparation and to allow him 12,000 thalers a year during the journey, which he proposed to commence at once. His plans, however, were thwarted, as they usually were in such cases, so he returned to Paris. The next 10 years of his life were prodigal in books. In 1819, he published the second volume of his Voyage to the Equinoctial Regions and the Mimosas and other loquacious plants of the new continent. In 1820, appeared a second paper on the mountains of India, and the fourth volume of the new genera of species of plants. The fifth volume of the new genera was published in the ensuing year, the sixth in 1823. To the latter year belongs his geological essay on the bearings of the rocks of the hemispheres. In 1824 he published a work on the structures and operation of volcanoes, and in 1825 the seventh volume of the new genera and third volume of his voyage to the equinoctial regions, and a numerical estimate of the population of the new continent. In 1826 and 27 he published the temperature of the surface of the sea in different parts of the torrid zone, the principal causes of the difference of the temperature of the globe, and a political essay on the island of Cuba. The draft of this latter work is to be found in the third volume of the Voyage to the Equinoctial Regions. He has expanded the chapter in which it occurred and enriched it with a map and a supplement devoted to his internal revenue and commerce of the Antilles and Colombia. Three works appeared in 1828 and 29, remarks on the goiter in the tropics, on the systems of numbers, and a revision of the grammines published in new genera and species of plants. A paragraph has sufficed to give the name and dates of these works. To criticize them would require at least a chapter. We shall not write that formal chapter, but lest the reader should find our resume as meager as an auctioneer's catalog, we shall devote a few pages to the subject. As we have already spoken of the true aspects of nature and the voyage to the equinoctial regions, we shall confine ourselves to some of the Humboldt's less popular, more abstruse books, discarding an embarras de riches in the shape of literary and scientific reviews. We shall let Humboldt himself describe them, believing that he understood the character of his writings as well as, if not better than any of his critics. We shall follow his own classification in the introduction to the Voyage of the Equinoctial Regions. Astronomical observations, trigonometrical operations, and barometrical measurements made during the course of the journey to the equinoctial regions of the new continent from 1799 to 1804. This work, to which are added historical researches on the position of several points important to navigators, contains first the original observations for which I made from the 12th degree of southern to the 41st degree of northern latitude, the transit of the sun and stars over the meridian, distances of the moon from the sun and the stars, occultations of the satellites, eclipses of the sun and moon, transits of Mercury over the disk of the sun, azimuth, meridian, altitudes of the moon to determine the longitude by the difference of declination, researches on the relative intensity of the light of the austral stars, geodesical measures, and etc. Secondly, a treatise on the astronomical refractions in the torrid zone, considered as the effect of the decrement of the caloric in the strata of air. Thirdly, the barometric measurements of the cordilleras of the Andes in Mexico, of the province of Venezuela, of the kingdom of Quito, and of New Granada, followed by geological observations and continuing the indication of 453 heights, calculations according to the method of M. Laplace and the new coefficient of M. Remold. Fourthly, on a table on of near 700 geographical positions on the new continent, 235 of which have been determined by my own observations according to the three coordinates of longitude, latitude, and height. 2. Equisental plants collected in Mexico, in the island of Cuba, in the province of Guacaras, Guamana, and Barcelona, and on the Andes of New Granada, Quito, and Peru, in the banks of Rio Negro, the Orinoco, and the river Amazon. M-Bomb Plant has in this work given figures of more than 40 new genera of plants in the torrid zone. Classed according to their natural families, the methodical descriptions of these species are both in French and in Latin, and are accompanied by observations on the medical properties of the plants, their use in arts, and the climates of the countries in which they are found. 3. Monography of the Melastoma, Resia, and other genera of this order of plants, comprising upwards of 150 of the Melastonae, which were collected during the course of our expeditions, and which form one of the most beautiful ornaments of the tropical vegetation. M-Bomb Plant is added to the plants of the same family, which, among many other rich stories of the natural history, M. Richard collected in his interesting expedition to the Antilles and French Guiana, and the descriptions of which he had communicated to us. 5. Essay on the geography of plants, accompanied by a physical table of the equisental regions, founded on measurements taken from the 10th degree of northern to the 10th degree of southern latitude. I have endeavored to collect in one point of view the whole of the physical phenomena of the part of the new continent comprised within the limits of the torrid zone, from the level of Pacific to the highest summit of the Andes, namely the vegetation of the soil and geographical relations, the cultivation of the soil, the temperature of the air, the limits of perpetual snow, the chemical constitution of the atmosphere, its electrical intensity, its barometrical pressure, the decrement of gravitation, the intensity of the azure color of the sky, the diminution of the light during its passage through the successive strata of the air, horizontal refractions in the heat of boiling water at different heights, 14 scales deposed side by side, and a profile of the Andes indicate the modifications to which these phenomena are subject from the influence of the elevation of the soil above the level of the sea. Each group of plants is placed at the height which nature has assigned to it, and we may follow the prestigious variety of their forms from the region of the palms and arborescent ferns to those of the Johannesia. The grammaceous plants and lichens, these regions form the natural divisions of the vegetable empire, and as perpetual snow is found in each climate as a determinate height, so in like manner the foliage species of the Quinquina incona have their fixed limits, which I have marked in the botanical chart belonging to this essay. 5. Observations on zoology and comparative anatomy. I have comprised in this work the history of the condor, experiments on the electrical action of the gymnotus, a treatise on the larynx of crocodiles, the quadrumini, and birds of the tropics, the description of several new species of reptiles, fishes, birds, monkeys, and other mammalia, but little known. M. Carver has enriched this work with a very comprehensive treatise on the axolotl of Lake Mexico and on the genera of the new Protea, That naturalist has also recognized two species of mastodons and an elephant among the fossil bones of quadrupeds which were brought from North and South America. For the descriptions of the insects collected by M. Bonpland, and we are indebted to M. Luttrell, whose labors have so much contributed to the progress of entomology in our times. The second volume of this work contains figures of the Mexican, Peruvian, and Austrian skulls, which we have deposited in the Museum of Natural History at Paris, or respecting which Blumenbach has published observations in the Decans Quita Canorium Diversium Gentium. 6. Political essay on the Kingdom of New Spain, with a physical and geographical atlas founded on astronomical observations and trigonometrical and barometrical measurements. This work, based on numerous official memoirs, presents in 6 divisions considerations on the extent and natural appearance of Mexico and population on the manners of the inhabitants, their ancient civilization, and the political division of their territory. It embraces also the agricultural and mineral riches, the manufactures of the commerce, the finances, the military defense of the vast country. In treating those different subjects, I have endeavored to consider them under a general point of view. I have drawn a parallel not only between New Spain and other Spanish colonies and the other United States of North America, but also between New Spain and the possessions of the English in Asia. I have compared to the agricultural of the countries simulated in the torrid zone with that of the temperate climates, and I have examined in the quantity of colonial procedure necessary to Europe in the present state of civilization. In training the geological description of the richest mining districts in Mexico, I have, in short, given a statements of the mineral produce, the population, the imports and exports of the whole Spanish America. I have examined several questions which, for want of the precise data, have not hitherto been treated with the attention they demanded, such as the influx and reflux of metals, their progress, accumulation in Europe and Asia, and the quantity of gold and silver, which, since the discovery of America down to our own times, the old world has received from the new. The geographical introduction at the beginning of this work contains the analysis of the materials which have been employed in the construction of the Mexican Atlas. 7. Views of the Cordilleras and monuments of the indigenous nations of the continent. This work is intended to represent a few of the grand scenes which nature presents in the lofty chain of the Andes, and at the same time to throw some light on the ancient civilization of the Americas. Through the study of their monuments of architecture, their hieroglyphics, their religious rites, and their astrological reveries, I have given in this work a description of their Tatilia, or the Mexican pyramids, and have compared their structure with that of the Temple of Belus. I have described the arabesques which cover the ruins of Miltilla, the idols of basalt ornamented with Canalictica of the heads of Isis, and a considerable number of symbological paintings representing the serpent women, the Mexican Eve, the deluge of Coxcox, and the first migrations of the native of the Aztec race. I have endeavored to prove the striking analogies existing between the calendar of the Toltecs, of the customaries of their zodiac, and the division of time, and the people of Tartary and Tibet, as well as the Mexican traditions of the four generations of the globe, the prayer-lands of the Hindus, and the four ages of Hesiod. In this work, I have also included, in addition to the hieroglyphical paintings I bought into Europe, fragments of all the Aztec manuscripts collected in Rome, Velletri, Vienna, and Dresden, and one of which reminds us by its literary symbols and of the Lovanas and the Chinese. Together with it, the volume contains picturesque views of the mountainous countries which those people inhabited. For example, the cataract of Tezcadama, Chimborazo, the volcano Jorullo, and Kedahama Bay, the pyramidal summit of which covered the eternal ice, is situated directly under the equinoctial line. In every zone, the configuration of the ground, the physiognomy of the plants, and the aspect of lovely or wild scenery have great influence on the progress of the arts and on the sky style which distributes their productions. This influence is so much the more perceivable in proportion as man is further removed from civilization. I could have added to this work researches on the character of languages, which are the most durable monuments of nations. I have collected a number of materials on the languages of America, of which M. Friedrich Segel and Vader have made use of, the former in his considerations on the Hindus, the latter in his continuation of the Mithridates of Endelung in the Ethnological magazine, and in his inquiries into the population of the new continent. These materials are now in the hands of my brother William von Humboldt, who during his travels in Spain and a long abode at Rome formed the richest collection of American vocabularies in existence. His extensive knowledge of the ancient and modern languages have enabled him to trace some curious analogies in relation to this subject, so important to the philosophical study of the history of man. A part of his labors will find a place in his narrative. Of the different works I have here enumerated, the second and third were composed by M. Bonpland from the observations which he made in a botanical journal. This journey contains more than 4,000 methodological descriptions of equisental plants, a ninth part only of which has been made by me. They appear in a separate publication under the title of Nuova Genera et Species Planetarium. In this work will be found not only under the new species but collected, which after careful examination by one of the first botanists of the age, Professor Wildenau, are computed to amount to 1,500, but also the interesting observations made by M. Bonpland and plants hitherto imperfectly described. The plants of this work are all engraved so accordingly to the method followed by M. Labrilidia in the Specimen Planetarium Novae Auditiae, a work remarkable for the profound research and clearness of arrangements.